Alright, in this lecture I'm going to tell you about modeling with curves. Now, where can I find the curves? The first thing we're going to do is get rid of our cube, and then we press Shift A, and then we can have a look at the curve category here. Now, we have several options: a Bezier curve, a circle, NURBS curve, NURB circle, path, and sapling tree gen. You probably won't see this last one on your setup because this is an add-on that you can use to create trees. Maybe we'll look into that later. Now, I'm going to explain the principle to you by using the Bezier circle. Now, we're going to add the Bezier circle, and let's look at it now. Now, you can see when we go into edit mode that we have several points, and these points also have lines on the outside, so to speak. Now, what can we do with this? We have the same option again when we press G, and we can move everything around. We can scale everything with S, and you can see we also can rotate the points, but all the points within this curve stay in the same place. Now, if we want to add an extra point to our curve, then we just press E to extrude, so to speak, and we have a new point here. Now, we can move it anywhere, we can scale it again, we can press E again, and so on and so on. We can even select multiple points by clicking subdivide, and then the points will be created in the middle, as we already know. So much for the basics of curve modeling. Now, we have a few other tools to our disposal right now, which are also very convenient. We have the curve pen, and this is a pretty cool tool because you can run it by pressing Shift spacebar and 0 on the keyboard, and we can just click here with the mouse, and then you can see that these points are now created here practically directly. However, my absolute favorite tool for curves is the draw tool, which is Shift spacebar and 9. We can almost simply paint here, and everything that is painted is turned into points and is connected as a curve, so to speak. So this is super cool for several reasons, because with curved you can do a lot of things. Let's take path, for example. Why not? Now, let's go to the object data properties on the right, and here we can see that we now have a few options for making something out of our curve. We can bevel the whole thing under geometry, and that is if you simply set up the depth, and then we can have a tube, so to speak. See? Look at this. Maybe you can already imagine what you can do with this. Also, we press EZ for extruding, and then we can use it to make a pipe. Now, there's multiple settings on the side, and the first one we're looking at is resolution. We set it to 30, so you can see that the curve becomes a bit smoother. In other words, if you have less resolution, it's going to become more angular and more low polygonal, so to speak. We also have the active spline settings here. For example, we can activate cyclic once, and then it will become one closed circuit. We also have the order U value, which determines the curve at the bottom of the pipe right now. So yeah, you can basically use this to make a pipe, for example, and then you can simply turn it into a mesh at some point, and then we would have a pipe mesh. We can then make a part thicker here, make a part thinner, etc., and so on, and that's basically what curve modeling is all about. Now, with this you can, for example, also model a cable very nicely, and then simply make it black, and that is usually enough to create a realistic looking cable. So, what else can we do with curves? Well, I'm going to show you by using this street design. I made this one really quickly. Obviously, we could add much more details, but that's not what this is about right now. What I want to look at is we want this street to be longer, and we're going to do that by using the array modifier. It does exactly what we want when we set the y factor to 1 here. And now we can simply set our count, make it very high, and then you can see the road is being extended. Obviously, this is a very rough example, but you get the idea. Can we also deform our road? Can we also bend it around, maybe? Well, first of all, we want to add a curve to tell Blender how our road should be deformed. So for this, we use a path this time. We can now adjust it nicely here. We can rotate it here on the z-axis, see? And we can then also take our street for the sake of clarity and just move it here. Now we have our curve, which we can now make significantly larger. And I want the direction of our street to be a little bit more like this here. Now the question is, how can we use this curve to deform our road? Well, as I said, there's a curve modifier for this. That means after our array modifier, we now use the curve modifier for the curve, and the modifier itself is pretty easy. We select a curve object here, our direction in this case, and we can see that it all works pretty well right off the bat. We can continue to do array modifying here, so to speak, so it looks a bit like building a toy racetrack at this point. One thing you do have to watch out for is that sometimes there might be some sharp edges in some of the corners. These corners only happen on the road though, and not in the crash barriers. But why is that? Well, that's because our curve modifier needs geometry here in order to calculate everything smoothly. And the problem is that our crash barrier has multiple faces, but our road only has one. We can actually solve this by giving the road more edge loops and more options to work with. So we press Ctrl R on the road, something like this. And what now happens is you can see that the road is way more rounded and looks a lot nicer. Now, if you don't want to do all this manually in edit mode, because you're in a situation where you don't have the time or you're not able to put the effort in, then you just go to the subdivision surface modifier and switch that from Catmull Clark to simple, and then put that before the curve modifier. And then you will see that the curve is a bit nicer. Just mentioning it very quickly, just a different way of doing it. And if we also want to change the height of our street, we want to say, for example, that it should go up here in the middle and then down again, something like that, we can add a path by doing RZ90, and we can also raise the scales. So if we choose our street again, we can now simply duplicate the curve modifier. And you will also see that if I simply apply the same curve modifier twice, the directional curve is used for a second time for deformation. This means that it is now twice as deformed as before. Now, of course, we want to switch this from direction to height, and once we've done that, you can see that it works wonders. And of course, the cool thing about this type of workflow is that you're so completely flexible with it. It basically means I can deform my road in any direction as much as I want and have a lot of fun with it. And the best part is that it's non-destructive, because these are modifiers that are applied to the road. So the moment I'm not happy with it anymore, I can just get rid of it and nothing is really changed. Anyway, the next tutorial is going to be about the displace modifier and all the cool things you can do with that. So I'm looking forward to teach you all about that, and I'll see you in the next lecture. All right.